Hello, this week's video is about muscle growth, and the question we got this week was what has to be present for muscles to grow, for hypertrophy, to get the muscle fibers bigger. Okay, so in simple terms, there's a few factors that have to be present for a muscle to grow or hypertrophy as you know it. One is the stimulus, and that means we have to provide enough mechanical tension and progressive overload on the muscle to force it to adapt, okay? So what we're looking at is, first of all, time under tension. So a lot of the research tells us that our sets need to be approximately around 60 seconds. Now, that isn't strictly a hard fact. We can have the muscle under tension for less time than that, and we can have the muscle under tension for a longer period than that. So the intensity of contraction and control is very important. So it's not about the weight you lift. When it comes to hypertrophy, it's how you actually lift and move the weight. So reducing momentum, dead pauses, stops, isometric holds during reps can all add intensity and tension through a muscle fiber and all related connective tissues. So using these are a great way of actually increasing the stimulus on a muscle. So if you're just bouncing the weight around and not controlling the eccentric lengthening of a muscle, you know, at certain lifts, it's very, very beneficial to have dead stops in them. Not always necessary in some lifts, and making sure that when you contract concentrically the muscle, we want to really squeeze and think about how we contract that muscle and making sure that rep is perfect. And at the top of a rep, sometimes again, depending on the lift, having a hard contraction at the top of a lift sometimes is extremely beneficial. So we've got to look at that when we are performing and executing perfect reps. And as well, another factor you must consider is the progressive overload. So when you start lifting, let's just use a bicep curl as an example. If you are curling a 5 kg dumbbell, 3 seconds lowering, 2 seconds lifting, 1 second squeeze at the top. If a year later you are still using a 5 kilo dumbbell for the same tempo and the same number of reps, well, the muscle will look the same, okay? Makes sense? If nothing changes, nothing changes. So we have to add things to progressively overload that muscle. They can be number of reps, total volume. So it can be reps per set, it can be sets per workout. And also another factor which you know is increasing the load. So usually you shouldn't increase more than one at any time. So if you're going from one workout to the next workout and you're trying to go from a 5 kg dumbbell to a 6 kilo dumbbell, that is a factor of overload. You wouldn't necessarily in that same workout add the weight plus reps plus sets. So you might go to a 6 kilo, the workout after you might add 2 reps or try and do so with a 6 kilo before adding more load, okay? Or you might add greater volume of reps and sets before you increase your load. So bear in mind, you know, we can increase the load, we can increase total volume, you know, they're both important and serve purposes at different times, okay? Second factor for muscle growth hypertrophy is adequate rest and recuperation. So we want to create what's called supercompensation. So we want to give enough time for all the protein to get into the body and enough rest and recovery for those fibers to supercompensate, grow thicker, stronger, ready for the next workout to repeat the process. Now, if we hit a muscle too soon before we've recovered, while you are still recovering, repairing and regenerating and growing, that isn't always a good thing. It can increase risk of injury as well. So adequate rest in between sessions is important. That varies on lifestyle, stress, age, intensity of lift. So all those factors depend on how much rest and recovery you will need. Now, caveat to that is there is something called planned overreaching, where sometimes you intentionally overtrain for a block of time and then you will have a longer period of rest to allow your body to, so you dig yourself into a hole with the sessions and then you will rest for a prolonged period, sometimes lots of good nutrition, lots of good sleep, and then super compensate and recover from that overtraining period, okay? But unless you really know what you're doing and you've got somebody planning your sessions for you, I would be very careful with planned overreaching. There's a bit of science to it, and it's not always a cookie cutter approach. Not everyone, depending on lifestyle, can react the same to planned overreaching. And thirdly is adequate nutrition, okay? Third part of the triangle of this. So we all know protein is important. Well, it's kind of like building a house without bricks or stone. You can't do that. You need the building blocks. You provide your stimulus, you rest, and you have to then make sure the component parts to actually provide the hypertrophy response is there, which is largely protein, which we know is built up of amino acids. It has to be present. Simple as that. Now, in terms of protein amounts, two things. If you look at what's optimal, so per serving of protein, up to about 50% of your body weight in kilos. So if you're an 80 kilo person, strength training, pretty much a perfect protein serving for you will be around 40 grams per meal, okay? If you can have less, it's no problem. But as well, to stimulate mTOR, we need around 25 grams of protein minimum, of which around 5 grams of leucine to create mTOR and the responses we need to create hypertrophy. So bear that in mind as well. So we have to make sure we have adequate protein per serving, over 25 grams, ideally up to 50% of your body weight per serving. And per day, now there's ranges on this. So it's not a simple per gram, per person. It's not black and white. So around the figure of 2 grams per pound of body weight is pretty much optimal for most people. If you're training 3 times a day, super intense and lifting very, very heavy, you might increase that figure slightly. If you're a strength trainer, strength training 3 to 5 times a week, at a reasonable intensity, I would say 2 grams per pound of body weight per day. 1 gram per pound of body weight per day is usually adequate, or around 2 to 2.2 grams per kg of body weight per day. That will work for the majority of people. So that's your daily allowance. And remember, 25 grams up to 50% of your body weight per protein serving is ideal to hit that overall daily target. All right. So remember, the stimulus, recovery and rest, and the nutrition when it comes to protein is essential. Hope that helps.